Oh, I was
Anything we say can be used against us.
What's that?
Anything we say can be used against us.
That's right.
in the court of happiness.
Right. So we were talking about how within 20, there were like 20 people who wrote eyewitness accounts within the first 10 to 20 years of Becket's death. So, you know, in prior saints, we talked about where there was a lot of legend and oral tradition. We're finally getting to the point in history where people actually write things down and record them. And so our knowledge of Thomas Becket is quite thorough and fairly reliable. And one eyewitness wrote, and we were talking about how he had such a great, like a couple of teenage boys, really, the relationship he had with King Henry, right? And so this is William Fitzstephen who wrote, when the daily round of business had been dealt with, the king and Thomas would sport together like boys of the same age, in the hall, in church, and out riding together. He hardly ever dined without the company of Sunday earls and barons.
Women.
Yeah, right. His board was resplendent with gold and silver vessels and abounded in dainty dishes and precious wines.
I envision them as just two hill-raising young
I think that's
Yeah.
exactly, that's the impression you get with all these different stories I read, you know, about him. That's exactly the
They had
impression.
fun.
Yeah. Yep.
That's one word.
I like that idea. Somebody suggested last week we do a movie. I think it was your wife who suggested.
Yeah.
Watch Beckett.
What, you know, do a movie
It's
night,
great
watch it.
movie.
Beckett, the movie.
Yeah.
Good. Very
We
good.
might want to do that.
Build a little drive-in out by the Toby's house. Once the sun goes down, watch it.
Sometimes the king, bow in hand, as he returned from the hunt or was about to set off, rode on horseback into the hall where the chancellor sat at table. Sometimes he would jump over the table and sit down and eat with him. Never in the whole Christian era were two men more of one mind or better friends. That's what William Fitzstephen wrote about Thomas Becket, who was at that point in his story chancellor for the king and not Bishop of Canterbury yet, and actually not a clergyman at that point in time. He was strictly the king's right-hand man, doing whatever the king wanted, and they saw eye to eye on all political matters. And yeah. And then 6 years after that, Thomas became chancellor when his old master, Archbishop Theobald, died. If you remember, Archbishop Theobald was the guy that took a liking to Becket. Becket had hired on as his assistant, and Theobald saw him with a lot of promise and intelligence and wit, and said, "Hey, let's train you to be the archdeacon." And he became archdeacon, and that's from the archdeaconship is when he left that to become King Henry's assistant. At this point in time, of course, Henry wanted to install Becket as bishop because of this relationship they had where Becket would do whatever Henry wanted, and Henry wanted.
Control the church.
He figured, yeah, he'll control the church. Becket does whatever he wants anyway, so this is going to work out great. You know, I can make some changes in the power the church has, which I have been wanting to do for a long time. Finally get that going. You know, ironically, Becket probably also helped Henry develop some of these schemes about how to get the church back under power, not knowing he would be the one to stop it from happening. Maybe it was guilt, you know, maybe.
Maybe God spoke to him.
Right. He was elected Archbishop of Canterbury in May 1162.
Happens the Archbishop is elected by a House of Bishops or something? Or do we know?
Geez, you know, I don't know. Back in that era, a lot of times they were selected by the king, but I think informally the king picks them out, and formally the bishops elect
The
them.
opportunity to endorse the king's
Right.
choice.
Yeah, I think that's the way it went back then. That's back when the European kingdoms and the church were very intertwined.
Yeah.
And you know, the Pope would be blessing and choosing the kings a lot of times.
It's great for just the opposite.
Henry II sought to reaffirm the power of the monarchy in its relationship to the medieval church. What had happened is the kingdom in between, they lost some power over the church, and Henry wanted to go back to that. Church of England had always been separated from the state, but kings had traditionally chosen the Archbishop of Canterbury.
So this is the same Henry that had 104 wives? Is that
No,
correct?
that's Henry
this is
VIII.
another-
Okay.
Yeah, this is Henry II. Henry II wasn't quite so bad. Henry II's biggest problem was his conflict with the church, actually, which ended up being his undoing, really. He never really politically recovered from Becket's death. He was that?
From Beckett.
Eventually when Becket was killed and they blamed Henry II, which,
So Henry II was in charge of a church that was not affiliated with the Pope in Rome at all?
it was. So here, that's a funny thing about the church, and I find this fascinating. The church in England really had about 600 years or so of not being affiliated with Rome. They were very independent, and you go back to like maybe call it the Celtic Church or just the Church in England, and they had some of their own ways of doing things, and somewhat more connected to the Orthodox Church in a way. And then,
I always thought Henry VIII disassociated with the Holy See because they wouldn't divorce him.
Well, that was certainly the part of that was like I would say that's a catalyst, but there was always, so when Rome started taking over England, which was a process that took a couple of centuries, but it started around 600 to 800, and they ruled authoritatively over England for a few centuries too, for about 600 years, 800 years. But there was always a faction of people that remembered when England was not ruled by Rome, and there was always that undercurrent of independence. And so when Henry VIII said, "Hey, screw Rome, I want to get a divorce," there was still that undercurrent amongst the priests and bishops of this philosophy that we're still somehow independent of Rome, and they capitalized on that. They ate it up. It's like, this is great. We can finally separate. There was that faction of people always present in England. Really, let's separate theologically and philosophically. We've always wanted this. This is our chance. So it was a political reason that started it. There was still an undercurrent of theology and all that in the Church of England that said
I don't understand why the Roman Catholic Church would have so much power. I mean, how could they enforce it? They didn't have armies, I don't think, or maybe certain kings allied with them that would make sure everybody else towed the mark. I don't know.
They had money. The church had money.
Excommunication.
Yeah, right.
Do you think people were really worried about that?
Yeah, because they could declare it for the entire country. If the monarch were excommunicated, it could trickle down to everybody and you'd all go to hell.
Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. So the issue, one of the issues that Henry II had was over disputes, over crimes. Like it says here, a particular part of contention was disputes and crimes, even serious ones like theft, rape, and murder, that involved church lands and members of the clergy were dealt with only by ecclesiastical courts.
Sort of like today.
So very much right.
With the sex scandals.
Yes, very much. So the church would have their authority over these wrongdoers who were priests or bishops, and then they wouldn't let the government touch it. But it wasn't always that way. Henry's father, Henry I, or I think it was his father, Henry I, didn't have that set up, and Henry II wanted to return to that. There was also a great difference in the amount of what the punishment was. A clergy person will be defrocked at worst, and as a comparison to a layman's justice system, which finds mutilation or execution. So you defrocked versus mutilation,
I'll take door number 1.
Yeah, right. So Henry expected Thomas to help him in limiting the benefits of clergy was the terminology given to this. The benefit of clergy was you'd be tried by the church and not by the government.
Is that true in the Roman Church now? I mean, the Pope's new edict.
Sure seems like it to me, doesn't it?
Right now, they're not criminally liable in a public court. a priest that,
It's
I
like
don't
they're
know.
immune.
Where's our lawyer? Do we have a lawyer?
Who
in the group?
decided
I don't know, I think it was
Oh.
your wife, but I'm not sure.
Oh,
the Pope did?
it seems like he,
Well, he's made that edict that they are gonna be subject, I think,
Well,
to,
good for him.
Of course, as we know, Henry became bishop and took on his new role with characteristic gusto and changed his way of looking and his outlook and became very, very pro-church. It was almost a bipolar kind of thing. It was a complete flip from anything the king wants to opposing anything the king wants.
wouldn't it be interesting to know who influenced him to do that, or did he do it on his own?
I don't know.
There had to be some factor.
Well, maybe he realized that, he had this, he's in this role now. And so oh, wait a minute. I think I need to protect the church.
It's almost like he had a road to Damascus kind of moment.
Yeah.
He suddenly decided this is what he was going to stand up for. And of course, Henry II wasn't expecting that at all. His hunting buddy and drinking buddy that he went carousing with, who was his right hand and did whatever he wanted to do, all of a sudden is opposing him. So at the beginning of June, he resigned his chancellorship, the advice of the most senior of the English bishops, Henry of Blois, Bishop of Winchester. And it's changed from the extravagant officer of the state with undying loyalty to the king to an ascetic archbishop. And really started opposing everything the king had to say and do. And becoming archbishop, Thomas attempted to restore lands seized from the Church of Canterbury during Stephen's reign. The king in between Henry I and Henry II was King Stephen. And King Stephen was the one where the church gained some ground on their power. Under Henry I, the church had less power, the state had more power. This King Stephen came along, and he was considered a fairly weak king, and he lost a lot of the power that the government had and let the church gain that power. So that's where Henry II was trying to go back to Henry I, the king in between the two Henrys. So there was a council at Woodstock.
Woodstock.
Yeah, not
I was in Woodstock.
Not the one we.
yeah.
Oh,
Reflections was there.
yeah. The headline act.
At that council, Thomas attacked a proposal of Henry that King Henry made on the grounds of his unprecedented and arbitrary innovation. However, the ironic thing was it didn't even affect the church. I mean, Thomas was already getting to a point where he was antagonistic against the king personally. It wasn't just he did indeed defend the church in all ways, but he was also just opposing the king. Just whatever the king said, forget it. I'm against it now.
Even back
wanted
in
to
those
stick
days,
personal.
they were debating capital gains.
What's that?
Even back in those days, they were debating capital
Oh,
gains.
right,
Oh.
right, yeah. 800 years ago, right? Or 900 years ago. So this contrariness that developed pervaded the archbishop's relations with the king throughout the rest of his life. And Henry was renowned for his temper and responded likewise. So they became very antagonistic and arbitrary towards each other. Then 1164, there was the Council of Clarendon. King Henry II was seeking to restore practices normal in the reign of Henry I. The councils of Clarendon had some constitutions, which were composed of 16 articles, and were an attempt to restrict ecclesiastic privileges and curb the power of the church and the extent of papal authority in England. And like I was saying earlier, Henry's predecessor, Stephen, who reigned for a few years, 9 years, 1135 to 54. Yes, 19 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
During that 19 years, the church lost a lot of its, church gained a lot of its power from the government at that point. So that's probably the key argument they were having, amongst many others. The constitutions were claimed to restore the law as it was during Henry I from 1100 to 35. And of course, Archbishop Becket, backed by the bishops, rejected the constitutions declared on. There's no way the church wanted to lose power. It's all a power struggle. The primary goal of the constitutions was to get rid of the benefit of clergy, and as they were called criminus clerks.
Criminus?
Criminus, yeah.
Criminus.
It's a term I've never seen anywhere else except
No.
for in relationship to this story. But it's the
Criminus.
clerks that are committing these crimes, but not being held accountable in a civil court. Like the
It's like they had
pedophile priests
they
today.
had diplomatic immunity from the
Basically,
church.
yes,
Basically,
that's exactly what that was.
representative of the church, the Pope, and so they had diplomatic immunity.
And like you said earlier, that's I don't think that's really changed when you got the pedophile priests.
Yeah.
Anyway, and they were limiting, including capital punishment prohibited by the church. And like I said, the ecclesiastical cases would end in defrocking instead of disfigurement or execution. Which is what the royal court
So
would do.
the first murder, they're defrocked, and then after that, they're not covered by the
Right.
immunity.
Yeah,
So
you
yeah.
get
if
one
they
pass.
do it again, boom, they're
You
One
get
pass.
one murder.
you get one murder. So make it count.
Yeah, right. It better be the one person you want to kill, right? Constitution declared and stated that once the ecclesiastical courts had tried and defrocked the clergyman, the church could no longer protect the individual, just like you were saying. So that's it. They would be tried in civil court. Then you can get mutilated or executed.
That's horrifying to think of priests going around killing people and stuff.
I know, right? Or rape or
Oh, yeah.
theft. Those are also, but yeah, all of that. Yeah, they really shouldn't get away with that either, just because they're priests. The king's contention was that flogging, fines, degradation, and excommunication were not sufficient punishment for their crimes. I have to agree with the king on that. The archbishop urged that apart from the principle of clerical privilege, to degrade a man first and then hang him afterwards was to punish him twice for the same offense. Once degraded, he lost all his rights, and if he committed another crime, he'd be punished like any other felon. And of course, they rejected that. So the king raked up some claims against Becket from his time as chancellor, claiming huge sums of money that the archbishop could not possibly pay. So they started making this personal. His actions were cold and resolute, their determination to humiliate the archbishop. Historians often say this was one of Henry's weakest moments by making it personal and attacking Thomas. And he was trying to prove a point that he could try the archbishop in a royal court. That's what he was going after. Even though they rejected the councils of Clarendon, he was still going to try to make it a civil matter instead of a clerical matter. And so then they went to another council in Northampton, 1164. So this fight and argument carried on. Can we try Becket at a secular court or not? Yeah, I meant to delete that one. So there's an earlier council. Thought I edited that out. All right. So anyway, so they got into open conflict and it got more tense. And it wasn't just the king, some of the other rich people, the magnates, the merchants, weren't that crazy about Becket. They started shouting insults at each other, and Becket started shouting insults back. And so it was really falling apart at this council. And so at that point, then the rumors began to circulate that the king was going to imprison Becket for life and mutilate him by having his eyes put out, his tongue cut off,
Oh,
I'll write him down.
which was a reasonable rumor since that's the kind of thing they did. So Becket took that seriously. You know, Henry had done similar things recently to a feudal lord in France. Where he was duke, that's why he had power in France. And the duke of Normandy, the guy in Normandy that got mutilated had his genitals mutilated. So
Well,
yeah,
supposedly that
Yes,
he
it's true.
didn't need those.
right.
Yeah, true.
A vow of celibacy.
At that point, Becket had a kidney stone and lost his courage and went to his bed. At least that's what the records say. Maybe he did. Maybe he was just scared. I don't know.
Mhm.
I would
kidney
be,
stones are no fun.
No, they're not any fun. No, they're very painful.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not dissing kidney stones. I'm just wondering if he really had one or not.
Yeah.
But in a few days, he recovered and returned. He was wearing his vestments and barefoot and defying the Earl of Leicester, where they were at, having this, where the Earl was trying to pronounce judgment on him. I'm not sure why.
Why barefoot?
He was just coming out of his bed out of the kidney
Oh.
stone.
Didn't find his shoes.
So he was still not feeling all that well,
He put his
basically.
vestments on.
He put his vestments on, but
He
Not-
couldn't
not
find his
shoes.
shoes.
so he probably was ill and not feeling well,
Yeah.
not thinking clearly. And they got to do a fight. The Earl attempted to pass judgment, and the Archbishop countered that no nobleman could judge a bishop.
Mhm.
He says, I will be judged by the Lord, the Pope alone, for he alone is competent to judge me and him. In your presence I appeal. And then he fled the court. And in the middle of the night, they left for Flanders. And when I read that, it's like I saw that on multiple sources. I was confused because I thought he went to France, but he did go to France. But he went to Flanders first. Flanders was on his way. And then I was wondering, where's Flanders? So I looked it up. Flanders is a region of Belgium. It's the northern part of Belgium. And he fled with his entourage in the middle of the night, said, I'm getting out of here, fearing execution or mutilation, and seeing that he didn't think he was going to win.
Survive. Mhm.
I can understand fleeing.
He was not feeling well with his kidney stone anyway. I can understand fleeing too. Yeah, I think that was the right move.
Yeah.
Unless you want your genitals mutilated. And we already have a kidney stone. You don't need that too, right? So on November 2nd, he and his personal servant Roger and a couple of companions left England and went to Flanders. And there he was visited by a Chief Justice, Richard de Lucy, who pleaded with him to return to England. So I guess the Belgians didn't really want him there.
Mhm.
They want to get in the middle of all that, right? Thomas refused to leave, and they ended up with a violent quarrel. And de Lucy withdrew the support that he gave to the bishop. And both sides appealed to Alexander II. Third, yeah.
He didn't seem to go along with anyone.
He was kind of contrary, yeah.
He got
Yeah.
along with Eleanor of Aquitaine pretty well.
Who's that?
His wife,
Oh, yeah.
they were married his whole time. He was.
Yeah, they were pretty contrary at this point. It was a lot of fighting and disagreeing. All the parties are over, man.
Mhm.
Anyway,
So I wonder how long it took to get communications from Rome to there. You know.
Pigeons.
The internet. No, I mean,
yeah,
it took weeks probably.
probably, yeah. Some messenger on a horse.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It would take a few weeks to get there.
if they went by ship or
Yeah,
you know.
right. I mean, the English Channel.
They
is not
probably
that
had
big,
regular
but-
commerce, probably by boat to Rome, around the Gibraltar and whatever, and probably some land routes, but so here, give this to the Pope on your way.
Yeah. So I think we'll go ahead and end here.
Yeah, it's 5 till.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Interesting story.
Well, especially since, like you say, it's so well documented.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we'll finish his story next week.
Darn, I'm not gonna be here.
Oh,
Okay, you got a recording.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Just a
I'll
quick
I'll do it on
comment.
demand. I'll demand church lecture.
Yeah.
Just a quick
Well, I
comment.
might be here.
Nelson?
Yes. The historical context of this conflict in England was also being worked out on the European continent with the struggle between the papacy, which of course so often was corrupt, and emerging nation states. And you think back to France and Italy in particular, and it also established, it was a precursor of a lot of the attitudes that framed the Reformation. Who was going to emerge? The nation state hierarchy or the church?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a wonder that maybe the power of the church on people that they feared being excommunicated. That's what kind of held this all together, because the monarchs, they could have just said, "Hey,
Right.
take a hike, Pope. We're going to do it our way, and we're going to create our own church within our country and or whatever." And
Right.
but I guess they feared it so much that kept them sort of in line and made that conflict.
Well, without the Pope's approval, their validity was questioned.
Yeah.
Well, it was
Yeah.
not a matter of theology, it was a matter of power and money.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks,
yeah, yeah.
Dave.
Good day.
Glad you guys logged in.
And we're going to start at 8:30 until we get the technical into, and then we'll have the class at
Start at
8.
6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, he's got to get here at 6. Good job, Bill.
Good idea.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
One other closing comment.
Yes, yes.
There.
Please, everyone there who have been so kind in sending get well wishes and support to Janice and me. It's really been quite helpful in getting recovery here. So bless you all and thank you for your kindness and consideration.
Oh, sure thing,
All right.
Nelson.
Sure thing.
Be well.
Bye-bye, dears.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye.
David's trying to make it around too here. Hold on, David Regnery's coming around too. Wave at you.
Oh, Dave Regnery's here.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave. Love you guys.
Yeah. Love you guys too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep. See you next week.
Okay.